director, of course, of the Academy of Ideas. Very sensible woman. Baroness Clare, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. Good to be with you.
Good to see you. I mean, gaslighting the public has reached new levels, I think, in this government. And while we're sort of laughing at it and we're treating them with scant regard, I'm sure I wanted to talk to you about this morning because I know you'll have a view on this blasphemy law that seems to have crept into to our nation by the back door. Somebody being prosecuted because apparently, and I could barely believe my ears when I heard the judge in this blasphemy case saying that the reason that they had to prosecute this man from Turkey, who has been a campaigner against the Islamification of Turkey for years and years and years, is because of the reaction that it caused. Because somebody decided to try and stab him with a knife. He must have been offensive. It was extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, two things. First of all, you spent years, didn't we, that, young girl got a short skirt on, got a low-cut top on, and we used to campaign vigorously to say that anyone who said she was bringing it on herself, right, that was victim shaming, victim blaming, and so it was. Right, the person who is responsible for the crime is the person who committed the crime, not the victim. And now, as you say, we have a judge, and I might be having to pipe down myself here. We have a judge who says, well, we know that it was an offensive act. We know that it was going to cause problems because he was stabbed by two passers-by. Truth, therefore, that he was the criminal. Yeah. And we've got to be very careful about what's happening here because this is indeed a racially aggravated public order offence. That means that we're repurposing public order crimes in relation to blasphemy. I mean, that's the only way that you can understand it. And your last two voicemails and your question to me is about gaslighting. Yeah. Because what I can't stand is that even raising this as an issue, saying, I think that this could be blasphemy laws by the back door. Can you answer, minister, or what have you? And they look you in the eye and they say, nothing to see here. Right. What are you talking about? And that's why the nation is tearing its hair out, because there's not even an acknowledgement of what the concerns are. And of course, we should be worried when we get to a situation in a pluralist, secular society that we are told that if you do something that upsets members of a particular religion, it can mean that you are going to be arrested by the police and charged by the CPS. That, of course, means that there is a chilling impact of blasphemy, that you think, oh, my God, I can't say anything about that in case it's interpreted as an attack on religion. And this was an explicit attack on Islam, the religion, but the judge conflated that religion with the effect it might have on some members of the religion, i.e. Muslims. And the irony there is that most of the time, I would say that that is an insult to Muslims, because some Muslims, most Muslims in many instances, would have their religion attacked and they might angrily argue back, but they're not going to go around stabbing you, right? This is insulting. I mean, you say, oh, if I show this cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, that's going to lead to violent riots and potentially people getting decapitated and potentially lead to, all this violence. No, not necessarily. It means that some of the more radical elements, adherents of a religion, might or might not interpret that in such a way and then behave criminally. Yeah. But that is not a reason why you should ever ring fence off a religion and say you can't criticize it, ridicule it, laugh at it, make fun of it. That's the basis on which a secular society operates, that you give freedom of religion, you can practice your religion as you want, and the deal is that we can tolerate that religion and its practices, but we're not going to endorse and hug it and protect it.
No, exactly right. I mean, because the criminal event that happened that day was not Hamid Kuskan, burning a copy of the Quran. It was the two guys that came out and attacked him for it. They were the criminals, and yet one of them, apparently, who can't be named, who tried to stab him, apparently is not going to be tried for at least a couple of years. That case has been sort of put on the back burner. He's suddenly put through the courts, and I know that people will say, well, it's a relatively minor offence, it's a relatively minor charge. But the important bit is, as you say, is who they're claiming is in the wrong here. you know, then the people in the wrong are not necessarily the ones who reacted. I mean, if I went outside and saw somebody burning a Bible and decided to go and beat them up, I bet you any money the police would arrest me.
And by the way, they should, because, you know, you might be upset seeing somebody burning a Bible, and I'm sure that you or I and none of us are advocating mass Quran burning or mass Bible burning, right?
Right.
But the point about it is that this is a religion, that is an idea, a set of beliefs. And in a free society, you should be free to criticize, lampoon, and attack a religious belief.
Definitely.
It's not the same as attacking the adherents of that belief. That is different. And the person who was attacked here, the person who, I mean, we had footage of a man wielding a very large knife, stabbing hysterically and saying, "That's my religion, how dare you?" Stabbing, spitting, being vile and abusive. And then, as the gentleman who burnt the Quran was lying on the ground, somebody runs over him on the bike, right, kicks him, right? So I think that this is an example of where the law has interfered in a way that it should never have done.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Front pages are full of the police saying, if you don't pay us more, we're going to have to choose which crimes we prosecute. And you think, you're already doing that, mate. And it's not to do with money. It's not to do with resources. The police at the moment and the criminal justice system is unduly biasing its attacks and spending a lot more time than it ought to policing our views, our opinions on things that they say are offensive. And in this instance, what they're saying about this burning of the Quran was it was offensive.
And that's the trouble, because it is really dangerous, because once you've got the state telling you what is offensive, you might remember back in about a year or more ago, Merseyside Police actually stood outside a poster that they'd commissioned in which it said, you know, being offensive is an offence. And then it turned out they were wrong about that, and they had to take the poster down, because being offensive is not an offence, and it never should be. And it might be unpleasant, and you might not like people doing it, but, you know, you can't start policing it on the basis that it's, you know, if you've taken offence, then I must be somehow guilty of something.
But I was on another channel yesterday, which we won't mention, and I was up against a Labour MP. And her response in relation to this blasphemy debate, such as it was a debate, was, apart from the fact that, you know, it had already been implied that I was a far-right Trumpian supporter, was in my constituency, 15% of the people in that constituency are Muslims. And you don't know the kind of fear that they live under. So she was the person who conflated this one act outside the Turkish consulate, you know, not in her constituency, and say, well, what about the 15% of Muslims in my constituency who will be fearful because they will have seen that happen? And in that way, you just, and this is the gaslighting bit. So she said, so we've got to be careful that we protect them from people who are trying to stir up any kind of hatred against them. And I thought the only person who has conflated this burning of the Quran with hatred of your constituents is you, right? And that's what blasphemy does. It gives a blanket protection to anything in relation to the religion of Islam and conflates it with every Muslim who lives in the country and says, we're only doing that to protect their feelings and their sensitivities, because otherwise they will feel that their religion is being insulted. That's what blasphemy law is. She then said, how ridiculous to call it a blasphemy law. That's typical, you know, that's the kind of people who are stirring things up, right? And so consequently, it has a chilling effect, not just on the whether you burn a Quran, but whether you talk about burning a Quran and whether you talk about the dangers of blasphemy laws by the back door.
Yeah, totally and absolutely right. And what about